by volume, whether it's in the form of gasoline as 1 gallon, this is representing 33.7 kilowatt hours of energy, or in the form of cans of LaCroix representing our lithium-ion battery cells. So this 1 gallon of gasoline might get a gas car 40 miles, where this 33.7 kilowatt hours of electrical energy could get an electric car 100 miles. So a more fair comparison would look like this. This is 2.5 gallons, so now both of these can travel the exact same distance. But bringing efficiency into the equation isn't nearly as simple as it sounds. So in this example, we're looking at a combustion engine operating at about 35 to 40% efficiency. Mazda, Toyota, probably others have gasoline engines that can operate above 40%. And then for the electric vehicle, we're assuming today's best energy density matched with about 90% plus energy efficiency. However, it is also fair to say that most gasoline engines aren't actually operating at 35% efficiency, so you'd likely need a bit more fuel. So let's take this to the extreme. If we were to compare a Bugatti Chiron capable of an impressive 11 miles per gallon combined to a Tesla Model S Performance, both with similar 0 to 60 times, the comparison would look more like this. So the Bugatti needs a gallon to travel 11 miles, and the Tesla Model S only needs 16 soda cans to travel that same 11 miles. So by volume, the amount of energy they need is actually really close. Combustion engines can be embarrassingly inefficient when used outside of their designated purpose, which for the Chiron is to go really fast. A Tesla operates super efficiently under most circumstances. But likewise, not all batteries are equal, and this represents today's best production lithium-ion batteries, not today's average batteries. And again, this is just the size of the battery cells, so the actual battery would be significantly larger once you incorporate the cell connections, battery cooling, and the housing for the battery. In summary, as far as energy density is concerned, gasoline has about a 13 times advantage by volume and a 50 times advantage by weight, and when you take efficiency into account, that translates to a 5 times and 20 times advantage respectively. It's not always as simple as saying electric cars are 3 times as efficient. They often are, but here's 4 things to consider. First, it depends on the scenario. An electric Hyundai Ioniq has a 2.5 times efficiency advantage versus a gasoline Hyundai Ioniq when driving in the city. But it only has a 2 times advantage in efficiency when driving on the highway. So the driving scenario plays a big role. Now yes, the Hyundai Ioniq is a hybrid, but its energy source is gasoline. Second, we're assuming you're comparing similar cars. But real world, people's car purchases are all over the place. If you go from a Jeep Wrangler V6 to a Tesla Model 3 standard range, your efficiency improves 700%. Third, ambient temperature plays a big role. Studies have shown that low outdoor temperatures can result in electric cars reducing their range by up to 40%. And cold temperatures also affect gasoline cars, but not as much, since electric cars use the battery pack for cabin heat, while gasoline cars use energy that would otherwise be wasted to heat the cabin. And fourth, weight. Adding range to a gasoline car doesn't cause it to weigh much more. So if I wanted my Hyundai Ioniq to go 60 miles further, I just add 1 gallon, which is only 6 pounds. So it doesn't really change the fuel economy of the vehicle. Adding 60 miles of range to an electric Hyundai Ioniq means adding 15.2 kilowatt hours of battery, which weighs 140 pounds in just the cells alone. So you're effectively carrying another passenger in the car to get that extra range. And perhaps you've experienced this, but the more passengers you add to your car, the worse your fuel economy is. So adding range hurts overall efficiency more in an electric car versus adding range to a combustion car. Regenerative braking helps here, but it certainly doesn't make up for all of it, and adding any weight increases rolling resistance, which is using energy anytime you're moving. Passenger cars are the sweet spot for electric transportation. It makes plenty of sense. But because of the challenge of energy density, if your vehicle gets larger, it makes it more difficult for that transportation to be powered by lithium-ion batteries. So let's take this one step further and analyze an electric semi-truck. Highway trucks are federally limited to a weight of 80,000 pounds. Some states allow for significantly higher, but let's just use the federal limit as an example. And let's assume we have a drag coefficient of 0.4, which is exceptionally good. Big wheels and tires, the ride height, and the gap between the tractor and the trailer all make it very difficult to have low drag coefficients like you see with passenger cars. Now, you may have seen claims that the Tesla Semi has a drag coefficient of 0.36, but remember, a big part of this number comes from the trailer you're pulling. If you have a non-typical trailer, for example pulling a load of cars, that drag coefficient dramatically increases. For the frontal area of the truck, we'll go with 100 square feet. It could be a little larger, but this is a fair estimate. And we'll say we want our semi-truck to have a range of 500 miles. Starting with aerodynamics, we can do the math, and we need about 430 kilowatt hours of energy to overcome aerodynamic drag alone to travel 500 miles while driving at 65 miles per hour. Obviously, that number would be a lot larger if you wanted to travel at a faster speed or if the trailer wasn't the ideal shape. Now, we also have to include the energy for overcoming rolling resistance. This isn't a big deal in passenger cars because they don't weigh that much. But it's a huge deal in semi-trucks because we're talking about hauling 80,000 pounds. So doing the math, the energy required to overcome rolling resistance over 500 miles of driving, we get 517 kilowatt hours. Now, you might be wondering, why is this number higher than the aerodynamic drag number? Part of it is because trucks are super heavy. The other part is that our aerodynamic example has unrealistically low variables to account for all scenarios. If you were to plug in a drag coefficient of 0.6 instead of 0.4, still very good for a semi-truck, and travel at 75 miles per hour on the highway, something I've commonly seen driving in the Northwest, you would need 858 kilowatt hours of energy overcome aerodynamic drag. But let's go back to our original math. Adding the energy required for rolling resistance and drag, we have a total of about 950 kilowatt hours of energy required to travel 500 miles. Let's say our powertrain operates at 95% efficiency, again, extremely good. We'd need a total of 1,000 kilowatt hours. And with an energy density of 250 watt hours per kilogram for the battery cells, this means our battery cells alone would weigh 4,000 kilograms or about 9,000 pounds. So in the case of a highway truck with a 500-mile range, 9,000 pounds of our total vehicle weight is made up of just battery cells alone. So now a quarter of your truck's weight is taken up just with the battery, so you're left with 60,000 pounds to accommodate the truck, the trailer, and whatever cargo you're taking. And because you're paid based on how much cargo you can take, obviously this is a bad thing. Not to mention, the equivalent of 10 Model S battery packs will be extremely expensive, and while operating costs will be lower for your truck, if your carrying capacity is reduced, you could also be reducing revenue per truck. So once again, the point being that energy density with electric vehicles needs to improve. Whew! Okay, here's the thing. I'm optimistic. I respect the heck out of all the engineers out there working on these problems. These are very difficult problems, and it's super easy for some idiot on the internet to be like, "No, it's too difficult." The emissions benefits of electric cars is very real and quite substantial. So ultimately, my point isn't that we should give up on EVs. It's that it's going to take some time before they're viable in a lot of situations. If you're an automotive engineer, props to you and thank you for doing the real